Hello, and welcome to Season 2 of the Revenue Marketing Report powered by Caliber Mind. Our goal in the RMR is to help marketers move from subject matter experts to strategic business partners. I'm your host, Camela Thompson, and today I'm thrilled to introduce Garrett Erny. Garrett, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Camela. First of all, thank you for having me. Honored to be here. So I've been in marketing operations my whole career, Pardot, HostSpot, Marketo certified. And recently I've decided to stop agency life and start my own freelancing consulting business, LLC. All those years of agency experience certainly did me in very well. I've been blessed by working with super talented people, kind of being at the right place at the right time, and just, having the right mentors around me to get me to this point. But I'm here today to talk a little bit about my experience, how I got here, the job market, and my experiences interviewing.
Awesome. So I know a lot of listeners out there are probably looking for marketing ops professionals right now. The market's really hot, I guess we could say. And we actually met through an interview process. And if we're being honest, I wouldn't call it an interview so much as checking out what was available at Caliber Mind and having a discussion about freelancing.
Yeah. So funny. Yeah. So the story is, really, when I decided to resign from my latest agency job as the director of MarTech, I just thought I could do this on my own, and so that how do you lead generation when you're first on your own? It was my thought, and the market's hot. There are jobs on LinkedIn, Indeed, everywhere. Posts shared on MOPS Slack channels, the communities, everywhere. MOPS jobs. So I applied, and I applied to a lot. I was pretty, loose with the salary requirements. So even if it was posted, that wasn't my goal. And when I saw Caliber Mind and, actually your title, it was like, I need to have a conversation with this person. And unfortunately, it wasn't a good fit for a full-time role, but that doesn't mean, we didn't get a connection out of it and have a, working relationship.
Right. So what I thought was really interesting about that conversation is you brought up considering continuing to freelance, and that's the world I came from, and I was very bullish on it, just because there is so much demand out there. But before we go into freelancing, let's talk a little bit from the perspective of somebody who is going through the interview process. What have you seen out there that kind of rubbed you the wrong way and you would advise hiring managers not to do?
Yeah, I mean, where do I start? No, I mean, I think one of my biggest takeaways is, even just a few weeks ago, I got a reply back from some, in-house job that I applied for in December and interviewed in January. And it was like, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. I'm moving we're moving at faster pace than that now. We can't, go that slowly in a sense. What I felt though during the interview processes themselves, you almost have to have somebody in the room that has that marketing operations background knowledge. And I've worked with a ton brilliant VP of marketing, folks, director of marketing. But like most of them will admit they're not the most tech savvy. Maybe they never used a marketing automation tool hands on. They don't come from a MOPS background like ourselves, but so a lot of it was just a solo leadership level position, and that's great. But we're not really asking the right questions, in my opinion, to get the most out of is this person really qualified? Can they help me return this investment if I'm going to hire a full-time MOPS person versus just trying to whether put it to a more junior person in-house or take it external or freelance.
Yes. Yeah, no, I hear you. I think I'm in a unique position because I have done ops as a marketing leader, and that's not always the norm. I see people moving more towards revenue operations from marketing operations. So something I've always pushed for and seen rarely is that if you don't have people in-house that can vet somebody's technical abilities, find somebody who does and contract with them to come into the interview process. Would you agree with that?
110%. I would say on I don't know, 8 out of the 10 interviews, 80%, there was not somebody there to even ask the right questions from a technical perspective. Hire somebody off Upwork for 3 hours of their time if you're doing 3 interviews just to be there and hear, like, I think we'll get to this in a little bit, but I phrase scenarios to prospective candidates in the sense that, it can be as simple as, do you know what a VLOOKUP and pivot table is in Excel? Or it can be as complicated as like, okay, well, why would you never want to put company placeholder in the company field? And obviously, because, that's going to show company placeholder and default value you try to overwrite it with won't show because you put placeholder in there. But, there's different scenarios I like to ask. And, obviously it's super important to be a good fit with the company. And, you have to tie it in what demand generation, lead generation is, all that revenue, driving revenue, all that good stuff. But it ultimately came down to me is like, well, this person ultimately is, great, very good at what they do, but, they're not asking me the right questions. And why that concerns me is like, if this is going to be my prospective boss, are we going to end up in a place where, I'm dilly-dallying my thumbs, and we're not moving things forward? Or am I going to move up in a place where we have, disagreements because, there may be a misunderstanding of the tech and what's needed and how long things take? So I would love, I love the background that you have, but to be able to interview, like I could tell right away, Mops and you comes from a Mops background. That just wasn't always the case, and that's fine. That's totally fine. But to have somebody there vetting out, those types of scenarios, asking the right questions, and even hearing how that person's, talking about whatever it may be, dynamic content, or ask them about define this, define that. It's easier than we make it out to be. We just don't do it. We don't ask the right questions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and there's a fine balance because I've seen really technical people come in to try to vet the prowess of the candidate and just hammer them the entire time with questions. And it's really important to balance that out with selling the position and the...
Well, yeah, 100%, right, for sure. It can't just be an interrogation, if you will, of, does this person know? That's not going to make the person, even if they do, why would they choose, if they feel interrogated? Or you're making them do this long project or multi-step project they're doing on the weekend. They're still trying to work, interviewing you, right? So I think it's a fine balance for sure, but it's like it's a feeling in your stomach, if you will, that this person at least knows their core stuff, and then you can build up from there. Like, we don't need to know, all the different attribution models and all, the real complicated stuff, but we do need to know the core and build from there.
And a lot of the skill sets I look for when I interview for a technical position have more to do with problem solving and requirements gathering and asking the right questions. I think I've hired people in the past who have had the right certifications, but when they get into the role, they have this mentality of, I'm going to do exactly what you tell me to do. And oftentimes that's the opposite of what we need for things to be sustainable long run. So what I'm usually looking for are people who are asking really thoughtful questions about the why behind some feature that's being requested.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
I would, 100%. And it's about, I know folks have used the term button clicker, but you really need to understand what you're clicking and what you're building, right? And I know that comes over time. For the in regard to the certifications, I was actually, well in the agency life before I was certified in anything, to be honest, and doing it well. And, I had a boss who said, like, being certified doesn't mean the respective tool, to be honest.
It's true.
Yeah, it is, and it's hard. It's difficult because when somebody waves a piece of paper, and gets in there, and then you realize, okay, well, like you're saying, if I'm literally telling you step by step what to do, and you're not reaching out, even being a good Googler is a pro trait, but like reaching out on Slack channels, communities, asking the right people the right questions. This is what MOPS is to its core, right? Take away what all the technology you need to know, but that's really what it is, because there's going to be something new every day, and the technology is going to change, and there's going to be Q1 updates and summer updates, and whatever it is. So you got to adapt to it and be that type of person. And I described it as some folks I work with is, being tenacious one, but don't sit around and wait for something to happen. Don't sit around and wait for a project manager to, come to you and tell you to do X, Y, Z. That's not going to be a recipe for forget about that role and that position, but your personal success. If you want to do mops in the long run.
Yeah, and for hiring managers out there, so what we've heard so far is bring in somebody technical to ask the technical questions. I think a lot of people don't realize that it doesn't need to be in the tool that you're in. If you have a really talented sales ops person that you respect, or somebody who's managing an IT you really respect, bring them in. They can ask questions to get to the heart of how somebody is problem solving and approaching issues. Another thing I see hiring managers do, I think is a really big mistake, is looking for certifications in the specific tool that they have. Because chances are that in 5 years from now, you're either going to have a different tool, or the tool you have is going to look nothing like it does today.
Right. Oh, yeah. Right. I couldn't agree with that more either. So in regard to, having the certifications, again, going back to it, I do have all myself, but it's about, again, knowing that core knowledge. And now the MarTech stack, the sales tech stack, it's exploded, right? You couldn't possibly get certified in everything and keep up with all certifications all the time. But what you can do is know the core basics. There's going to be across, like, let's just take, for example, Pardot, HubSpot, Marketo. There's a lot of similarities. There's certainly differences and nuances. They're different companies, right? But, do you know how to build list logic? And do you understand fields and custom fields? And do you understand field types, making sure that's selected right? Do you know where to look for Salesforce syncers if it's connected to Salesforce? And that'd be different, but, how do you handle those syncers may be the same in terms of the processes you put in place to actually block them in the future once you find them and clean them up. But, across the board, let's just take a project, lead scoring, attribution, a database cleanup, all the tools needed, but how do you handle those type of projects? And that has nothing to do with the certification or a specific tool, right? We got to, create an agenda or even an outline. There's audit workbooks per se, I know is used all the time. But, documentation is probably super understated of how important it is. You can document it well and then reuse it. In the future, you're saving yourself a lot of time and favors. Now, it has to be, obviously, when you go back and use it, it has to be, to the respective client and tailored. But when you have that core, okay, I can handle this line of projects, here are my long-term projects, here's probably my medium-term wins, and then, like, here's quick wins, and you can get that from an audit. And you can get a person to say, and look at it like, not from a tool perspective, but what is wrong with their marketing automation, or what is wrong with their sales process? Do you understand what the funnel is? Are they is the lead routing appropriate? We're talking about all that really higher level stuff, and then how they're running it. I mean, you're not going to have two clients really with the same tech stack. You're really not anymore with the exact same tech stack. So it's all about, knowing, understanding, sales sequences. It goes on and on in terms of what you can teach yourself, and, teach yourself really, or, find somebody in the, respective field to teach you. But it's about knowing those core concepts, and then the tool, you'll pick it up. It's just software, right? If you know logic, if you know and/or statements, like you know that your field types, it maybe slightly different how to do it, but that's what you need to do to know those core concepts.
Yeah, and I think Jeff Q in a prior episode said it really well, and that he's more looking for somebody who can whiteboard a process and understand how things impact each other down the chain. Because really, marketing ops is at the very start of the tech stack, and everything they do rolls through. And you need somebody who can understand that and work really well cross-functionally to define and get buy-in on things. So like Jeff Q said, I would rather hire somebody who has experience in MailChimp, but has like some pretty good process understanding and the ability to really network and get buy-in from other people, than I would who's got a bunch of certifications, but I guess has problems making eye contact, or I mean, there are situations where that's understandable, but you need somebody who can get cross-functional buy-in.
For sure, and that's it's important to be able to obviously not only analyze, document, but also present your information and kind of present it in a way that's digestible, clear and concise, and things of that nature, and understanding, tailored to your audience, obviously. But yeah, so I think one other thing I want to say is I think the important thing about thinking about certifications is it's not it's not how many you have, and you should be blindly. I no naming names, like we all know people who fast forward through the HubSpot Academy. There's some ways you can put it on your LinkedIn profile. Let me just say this now. It's not going to do anybody any favors, including yourself. And ultimately, what happens is people know people in this marketing ops, and the community is pretty small. So if it gets out there, we talk to each other, people know who can get stuff done and who can't. So if you're a newer, more junior person, we need, more marketing operations professionals. But do yourself a favor, take the time. These courses are designed for a reason. And to cheat the system is just it reminds me of just high school, or grade school. There's no penalty per se, but you're not doing yourself any favor.
No, no. Reputation is just everything in operations. And yeah, don't be sneaky. That's a great one. So on the hiring side, let's talk a little bit about etiquette, because I think there are a lot of things that are really important. Some things I want to just reiterate that you said earlier that are really great are you want to find a leader that respects the position and will work really closely with you and communicate clearly with you. So if they're honest about not being super tech savvy, but they know they need the position and they know what they don't know, that speaks volumes to me, as opposed to somebody who's trying to bluff their way through an interview.
Yeah, I mean, this is a huge one, as we touched on, but I think it's okay, right? It's okay not to know. I'm not asking VPs and CMOs. They have a ton going on. I'm not asking them to. I'm asking them to trust me, right? Trust my opinion, and then when I'm not the person particularly, and I think a lot of MOPS people, you wouldn't say something unless you really we should really do it this way because it's the best way to do it. It's best part, whatever it is. And if there's the person on the other end, well, no, I think we should do it this way, and the reason is they just think it's best. There's a big difference. I know something. You don't know whether it is this technology or this is going to cause problems down the line. Building of the model this way, whatever it is. I just think people need to in that role, and hopefully one day I can just hands off and somebody have my marketing operations expert do it all, present the and screen share and present and the whole nine. But trust that person. If you're going to hire them, especially for a full-time role, you need to trust them, and having control over a marketing operations professional, they don't like it, especially if they know what they're doing. We're kind of a unique bunch, if you will, but we know what we're doing. We've been through the lumps to get here. In the sense, we've all made mistakes that have made us better, especially in the beginning of our careers. So when you have somebody, I totally respect the boss-employee relationship. You obviously need to be in a respectful way, but if it comes to a point where that person in the higher up in the marketing level isn't respecting your opinion on a weekly, whatever it is, over and over again, or there's things said like, well, this is higher than you or whatever it is, and this is the way we do it, something like that. It's marketing operations has become really more respected over time, and it's only going up in terms of that nature, in terms of respect rankings. I think it's it's the reason why we're in the hiring situation we are, but it's just let your employee, your MOPS professional, do what they do best. And if there's always disagreements and discussions, and that's great. And I'm not one to say get into somebody else's business per se. I'm not going to go to the head of content and say, I think we should write this way. Or
Right.
the head of strategy, like, I think, or go to my, CEO and say, I think we should run the company this way. Or, even, from a lead gen or demand gen team's perspective, I think we should do this or that. I'm not going to do that. It's not so much staying in your lane. There's always cross functionality between the teams, and that's great. But when you're in that, position of a VP plus, just trust. It makes the MOPS person particularly feel like, I think, like they're not trusted or respected for the very difficult job that they do. And there's a lot on the line. And when you have a good MOPS person, you don't really need it. Like if you don't hear from the MOPS person, like that means things are probably going pretty well. When they start bringing your name up a lot, that means probably things are happening that are crashing or causing issues, emails being sent, list errors, whatever it is. But trust that person, because I think what's happening now is marketing operation professionals know they can go elsewhere. And,
Oh, yeah.
and they know they can even go freelance if they really wanted to. So I mean, it's not anymore like some people love to stick around, but like everybody knows. In the MOPS world now, it's not a secret anymore. There's tons of positions. The supply, the demand outweighs the supply.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And I think we see a lot of people in operations very frustrated because I think sometimes the leadership team doesn't realize that agency is something everybody wants and people are driven by similar things. So if you put yourself in their shoes and people are throwing them projects at the last minute instead of involving them in the planning process, or people are going out and buying a bunch of technology without involving them, and then they find out that it doesn't integrate with your core systems, and these problems keep happening over and over, you're going to have somebody who leaves. And I think there needs to be some onus on the marketing operations side too. Like we need to learn how to manage up and stay connected in those conversations. Now, it's one thing if you're being blocked and the person's consistently not communicating what the key business objectives are and what kind of initiatives they're going to be running in the next quarter. Like there needs to be shared ownership. And if you're truly not getting buy-in, you can go somewhere else. So I think those are really good points.
Yeah, for sure. And I love your point about not being involved, in those conversations. And sometimes, the excuse is, well, we can't double bill the hours. Well, who would you rather, in a sense, like, would you rather have that person on, especially in the beginning, to say, whoa, hey, like, this isn't going to, or we have to do this, we have to bring in a Zapier, whatever it is. By the time it gets to you, it's just like, okay, build this out. And it's like, well, we didn't really go through these prereqs together, did we?
Yeah. Would you rather have it blow up when it's just about to go out the door? Or would you rather have somebody come in early and fix all those things so it can roll out smoothly? I mean, it's a no-brainer to me, but I've seen it happen over and over.
Yeah, and there's often a lot of people on those calls too. So I think, but in the beginning, there's got to be at least have a pull just the marketing operations person aside and get them a 30 minutes, to ask the questions with the client and a few other key stakeholders. That's all.
Yeah. So something else I've seen over and over, you're going through the interview process, and as a test to make sure you can do what you say you can do, you get a multi-step project. I have opinions on this. I'll let you go first. How do you feel about the homework assignment during interviews?
Yeah, I don't do it personally. Like at this, I think like there's a stage of your career where that's almost an insult, and that's not necessarily the employer knowing maybe they don't know how your status or whatever it is, but I wouldn't recommend it at all. I think. There's a scenario to do it, but again, like going back to my point earlier, you can't get back to me 3 months later. I don't even remember interviewing with you, or 2 months later. It's kind of, we're in this microwave society, and that includes interview, especially for, marketing operations, at this time, especially.
I feel like it goes back to our original statement about if you bring in somebody who understands the technology and can ask good questions, you don't need to do the test.
Yeah.
You just
Yeah.
don't need it. And
Yeah.
then the other piece is like, I've had people with certifications blow up at me for asking them simple questions. Those people need to understand that there are plenty of people with certifications who haven't done the groundwork.
Yeah.
And that question catches them up. So,
Both very good points. Both very good points. I just think with the multi-step though, right? Like, okay, if you want a project, like you got to give it to them in a. There's no part A, part B, part C. I mean, give them a small take-home test, and again, it's answering those. Do you understand the difference between A and B? Can you do C? Like, I mean, it's not. You should be able to tell again from those conversations. But if you're giving somebody a test, you're probably not overly comfortable with their skill set. And then if you get it back and you're giving them something else, and then you get it back, and even if like that person is at some point that person throws their hands up in the air, or they already moved on because somebody else hired them at the
yeah.
rate you were offering them. So
Yeah. It's a interviewees market, I guess you could say.
yeah, right. Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, I think it behooves hiring managers to make the process as quick and simple as possible. If they don't have a good feeling about somebody, it's time to move on. And then if you don't make the investment to bring somebody in who's technical to interview, just expect you're going to make some mistakes during the hiring process that you'll learn from, and you need to just admit your mistake and move on as quickly as possible.
Yeah, no, and hey, it's not an easy job, from the hiring manager's perspective to get, we're feeling the heart, but like, it's not easy, right? I mean, from both sides of it, I'll be fair, it is, hard, but this is why we're having this conversation, to actually maximize your chances of getting the right person and not making it's so much hiring and firing sometimes when you get the wrong person, just it's about maximizing it. Nothing's 100%, right? Like
Yep.
it's maximize your chances to get that right person. And with all these core traits and again, like being a always learning mentality and just like problem solver, like those are things you need to, ultimately 5 years from the hire, even a year, like that person's still with you and they made a tremendous amount of progress.
Right. And if you had somebody in MOPS walk out on you and you're backfilling their position, chances are you're working with an agency, and most agencies will happily, for billable hours, participate in the interview process.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and that's agency. You can find somebody technical and pay them an hourly rate better than an agency to do that type of work. But that's everybody. Agencies. Everybody has an opinion on agencies. They're very successful. Most of them, they're very popular, and I think it's because a lot of these companies have nowhere to go and nowhere to turn. They don't have the set expertise in house, or they don't have time to ramp somebody up or junior, or they just the person they do have doesn't have time. So yeah, it is a hourly rate, which are getting higher and higher as
oh
we
my
both
goodness!
know. Yeah, it's really something anymore. But I think from that perspective, like you can find quality help elsewhere, and I think it's like, again, knowing the right people, networking, and then like getting what do you really need from that person, or determine that, and then is it a long-term, short-term like project relationship? Think of those type, because like if somebody's super talented, but let's say they're somewhat rude, whatever it is, you can handle them for a 2-week project, but you don't want to hire them as a full-time or even a long-term agency or anything like that.
So if you are going for an agency, just remember you're going to be spending more money that way in the long run. And when you're looking for an agency, look for one that's goal is to leave with you in better shape, and doesn't hide their secret sauce.
Yeah,
so
no,
that
for
you're
sure.
stuck using them forever.
And my pitch is, and it's not a pitch, and I guess I fall in that agency category. I hope to be, right now it's just myself at Poppy's Techy, but I trust me, myself, and I, and I'll eventually hopefully bring in people I trust and pass all those things we just talked about, pass those tests. But it's really about do we look at the situation and say, okay, well, if I, pitch my services and this, that, and the other thing. If I'm the client, if I'm, let's just say, a software vendor, I need HubSpot help, whatever it is, I want to like talk to somebody who's actually doing the work, or at least know that person or meet that person. But when I go to somebody now, and again, not agency, all there's all different types of agencies. I just strictly focus on tech, martech, sales tech. But it's like, okay, I'm going to document everything we do. Not only are we just going to record everything and get it and throw it over the fence, but I'm going to create Loom videos for you and small tutorials. And my emails I'm going to take time to really, lay it out clear and concise and not just throw it over the fence and slide it down. So the next person that comes in, you can hire a junior person. And one of the services, is that's growing popularity is just training.
Yes.
Whether it's a marketing agency, needing to train their more junior MOPS folks, or, there's folks on the team, at an in-house place that they have they have all those things, those subsets of a quality MOPS person we talked about, but they just need more like hands-on training. And it's that type of, how we empower the next generation and even help, all these companies and ironically agencies, scale up to a level where we can train the next generation, or if you will. So I couldn't agree more. I'm all about I'm not trying to hide anything, right? I'm trying to be as transparent and help you get so you can handle this one day on your own internally. I don't want to be around, 5 years from now. In a sense, I do, but I would also love to see, growth where you can move on and hire somebody in-house, because ultimately, that's going to save both an agency and an in-house money, and everybody likes that.
Yeah, thank you for being one of the good ones, because seriously, I just there's two mentalities out there that I've seen in the market. One is they want to make their client as dependent on them as possible and maintain that relationship as long as possible, but the company they're working with feels like a hostage. Or you can delight your customers, set them up for success, and get referrals. And that's always how business grows.
Oh yeah, HubSpot inbound methodology. Delighted.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
sure.
yeah, and it's sad. It's there's always two sides to every story per se. So I don't, but I don't like to lock folks into like a long-term contract, because what if things do go awry or something happens with the person, let's say they go out sick for an extended period, whatever it is, I don't like to do that, but when they'll come back, right? Like, it's not there's always going to be plenty of work, the implementation project is completed. Okay, where we go from there? I mean, so if you delight them in that experience, or your first part, they're always going to come back. So lock them in, and it doesn't make them. Yeah, I've seen it from both sides. And from a human being perspective, I think you're secretly more respected or disrespected in a sense.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. So, Garrett, I love asking this question. What would you go back in time and tell your past self when it comes to career advice?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, again, very fortunate and blessed to be in this position. Had great mentors and people who, took time to actually have their personal schedule to help me. And there's too many people to thank. But if I go back and look at it, I would tell myself that, calm down. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And sometimes I bottle my emotions up and let them out in one swoop, and that was not in a positive way. I've grown from those experiences, right? Like, we've all done things we regret, especially in the workplace. I feel like more than ever, people are changing jobs and things like that nature. But I mean, I've been both in-house and before the agencies last 4 or so years, it was in-house. And at the end of the day, I don't think it was anything more than I was just really bored. And at the time in 2016 or so, it wasn't as understood. I remember when I was leaving the company, believe it or not, there was, you had to go through HR, and there's some more senior level folks, and you have to sign some, so they're yeah, I was basically explaining why I left, and the HR lady kind of looked at me and kind of said something like, "Well, I don't even understand what you do." And I was like, oh,
Exactly.
okay. And
Exactly.
yeah, and I wanted to say, like, and I was there, like, explaining my side of the story, like, and what, it did. There was a little bit of salary, just dispute and things of that nature, but. And I want to say, like, well, I don't understand what you do at this point. Like, I'm coming to you with, like, it's not your job to understand what somebody does at the HR role. And then, like, and then the senior guy behind her, he was like, no, you'll be all right, man. You know Pardo. And I'm like, all right, this is probably the right breakup. It's not Pardo, it's Parda. Like, I'm going to head out. And they were Parda. I migrated from HubSpot to Parda and the whole nine. But so I just think when sometimes we get ahead of ourselves and say, well, I'm not at point where I want to be, but are you at the point where you're working every day to get there? And every day I'm trying to learn something, and that's how I've taken that mentality, and it's got me here. And like, it's not just about, billing hours, and, it's about helping people out. It's about, personal learning. Do you have that type of mentality? But going back to helping people out, again, obviously not naming names, but I've been in multiple times where there's been, tears. And that person is, so upset because there's so much on the line from a revenue perspective, usually, how that's tied to marketing. And when there's a mishap on the marketing side, and then it leads the sales team to complain. So, and then to bring them back up, there's so many of these VP marketings that depend on agencies. They're not like, they depend on this person, so they don't have to worry about. That's why they're paying these fees. But when somebody has that moment, and we've all been there, where it's like, this is horrible, this is a huge mistake, whatever it is, having that day. The first step, what can I do to help? And to see them let that emotion out, and obviously nobody wants to do that in front of anybody else, but that's how emotional it can be sometimes. And what's really on the line with marketing is the money, and pushing it to sales. That's what I think, the general, everybody thinks advertise, but that's a whole different discussion. But to actually help people, and then, make a career out of it, make a hobby out of it, you'll do great. I mean, there's plenty of opportunity. There's plenty of, there's all different tools out there. I mean, again, I just think looking back on your former self, can you say, did I treat it like a marathon to get here, or did I treat it like a sprint? And I would say 98% of people who are what they deem successful is they treated it more like a marathon. They realized right out of college they weren't going to be the VP of marketing, or whatever it is. They took it slow and steady. And looking back on some of my mistakes, like, I just think I bottled some things up too much, and then let it out, and then bottled it up and let it out. But and treated it like a sprint mentality at times. But looking back on it now, it's all about slow and steady.
Well, Garrett, where can people find you online?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. So it's poppiestechy.com. And, we have a website. We have a LinkedIn account, Facebook, so no Instagram. But yeah, I encourage everybody to go to poppiestechy.com. We offer a couple core services. It's Ask Poppy. That's just like getting a Loom video back of a quick question, or knowing you want some more information in a screen share, whatever it is. We have the training I talked about. That's both from a B2B and a B2C perspective. So maybe you're an individual that is trying to have a career out of it. We can work something out where I know plenty of folks, like, we can train you up, get you a job, and you can, let's just get a percentage of your, your certification or training back. And then from a B2B perspective, it's like, you're paying somebody, right? They have the ability. Maybe they're struggling a little bit. Let's just get them trained up. Well, you don't need an agency to do that. You pay somebody who has extreme knowledge, training, Loom videos, clear documentation, including emails, and get them trained up, and then, that's it. And then they'll come back. Again, if you delight them, they'll come back for something else eventually. So I think, with Poppy's Tech Aid, it was all about giving folks a different option. And like the thought is, like, there's a lot of time and money wasted on MAR tech and sales tech. I think that's not a secret anymore. So let's look at a couple different ways we can do it and my vision is to build up, folks who can actually do mops and stop making it such a niche specialty. So that's the plan. So thank you for asking.
Wonderful. So for those of you who are listening and enjoy the podcast, please tell 2 friends. Rate, review, and subscribe. It does make a difference. And for those of you looking for more great content like this, check out calibermind.com.